Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who loves soccer, Mr. Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hey buddy, how you doing?
Pretty good. It's been a strange day though.
It has.
We were planning to watch Dortmund Monaco and review that, and we found out, maybe 45 minutes or so before kickoff, half an hour before kickoff, that game was probably not going on. And then 15 minutes before kickoff, we got the word that it was postponed until tomorrow.
Yeah, and I actually saw it on my phone because I got an alert from my editor at Paste, Richard, and it was basically
Richard Whittle?
And it said this is an evolving story with any evolving story, and I was sort of like, uh-oh, that sounds like very, very big news has happened, and sure enough, yes. Very bad news.
So what has happened? I know you've got a little summary in front of you. I'm always really careful with news like this. I don't want to sort of speak off the cuff and get it wrong.
Yeah. So basically, the quick synopsis, courtesy of The Guardian, is as Dortmund made their way to today's scheduled Champions League quarterfinal, first leg at home to Monaco, their team bus came under what police described as an attack with serious explosives. 3 explosives went off, and police later found at least one more suspect device. Marc Bartra, the Dortmund player, suffered a fractured arm and is either currently undergoing or already has undergone surgery, depending on when you listen to this episode. Police found a letter claiming responsibility, but they have not yet said who the responsible party is. There are a couple different theories in there. Some are terrorism, some are blackmail.
I see. We're not going to speculate. I'm going to say that.
We are not. The only other thing to add there is that they have confirmed, the police, that the Dortmund bus was the target of the attack.
Wow.
With all that said, they've also confirmed that the match will go ahead tomorrow at 12:45 Eastern Time.
Okay, so I introduced you as a man who loves soccer, and I did that because there was a thing you said to me sort of as we were talking about this, as we were waiting to watch Juve Barcelona, which we'll review later on today's show. So why did this event make you love soccer?
It's getting a little emotional over here.
Yeah.
For 2 reasons. One, because if this does end up being a terrorist attack, just the way that Dortmund fans and Monaco fans, Dortmund and Monaco as clubs, the police, everyone has responded, it I think did the opposite of what was intended. Obviously, it's intended to scare people, to frighten people, to make people less certain about the people around them. It seems like it's done just the opposite, that there's been this sustained Twitter campaign for Monaco fans to stay the night with Dortmund fans so they don't have to pay for additional accommodations.
It's Dortmund fans welcoming Monaco fans into their home for the night because an unexpected stay. Right?
And so there's been tons of photos of people either out at bars together, mostly I think though in Dortmund fans' homes or apartments, having some drinks, eating some spaghetti, watching the other Champions League game from today, which we will talk about later on.
Yeah.
And it just seems like it has very much, if it is a terrorist attack, has very much had the opposite effect of what was intended.
Yeah.
And that's why I like soccer, is because it is kind of the global language. It brings people together. It's a thing that you can talk about in pretty much any country with pretty much any person. That's why I love that game so much.
And that game tomorrow, again, been rescheduled for Wednesday. You said 12:45 Eastern. Dortmund v Monaco. You're going to see sort of a very united atmosphere in the stands and on the field. So that is the beauty of soccer in moments like this.
Yeah, because it transcends that. Like, there's still going to be, I'm sure, some playful ribbing, and there'll be some back and forth chants, but it's also you can transcend to a greater degree what's going on the field to humanity as a whole, and that's the beautiful thing about it.
Okay, so there'll still be a game, right? So we will watch and review that game tomorrow. I'm sure there'll be an emotional element, but there will also be maybe Christian Pulisic on the field. So we'll be watching Dortmund Monaco and reviewing it on tomorrow's show. Later on today's show, we'll review Juventus's 3-0 win over Barcelona. Really interesting stuff going on in that game. We also want to talk about the World Cup 2026 bid, because now we have the announcement from US Soccer, from the Mexican Federation, and from the Canadian Soccer Association with a few more details about the joint 2026 bid.
We do, and now that we've talked about the somber event of the day, I'm going to try to be a little bit more energetic, because I think that was a more subdued introduction than maybe people are used to from the Total Soccer show.
It's hard to have the normal energy with something so somber.
I think so. Yeah, it's hard to make a joke and then be like, so let's talk about the bombing of a Dortmund bus.
All right, well, here's the thing. I am excited about the 2026 World Cup.
Okay.
And I feel like there's been a lot of criticism of this bid, but for me...
I don't know who would have possibly criticized it. It's certainly not the person sitting across from you.
I would say, Canadian fans maybe don't have much room to criticise, and Mexican fans do. Because the big details that came out that we didn't know before is that the US will host 60 of the 80 games in the proposed bid for the 2026 World Cup. That means then 10 games to Canada, 10 games to Mexico. I think I said on this morning's Goalmouth, that is only 12.5% of a World Cup each.
Yes.
Right?
Now, I will add, and I don't know, people might be frustrated with this. That's fine with me. I will add things like, so Canada are going to be hosting 10 games. That's, as you said, official. as yet, it could be difficult for them to have fields to accommodate those because a lot of the Canadian fields are on turf.
But it's almost 10 years. You can grow some grass in.
But here's my point. Here's why I was going to say is that but taken within the view of a lot of World Cups that have happened previously and will be happening in the future, that is a very, very minor complaint in terms of I don't know if you're going to be able to convert a stadium with a turf field into a grass field. Yeah, you can do that pretty easily.
I could do that for you tomorrow.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, actually, the challenge will be to do it without the sort of turf with when they do it really quickly and you can see the turf isn't even properly connected. Obviously for a World Cup, he says, crossing his fingers, that will not happen. There will be proper grass grown in any Canadian stadium with artificial turf.
Absolutely. But I bring that up only to say that so I'm not as enthused as you are by this World Cup bid, but by the same token, I am much happier with this World Cup bid than I am with the countries that are hosting the 2018 and 2022 World Cups.
Okay. So let me just get to this point though. I was going to say that Mexico maybe have more of a case to be upset about it because with all respect to Canada, Mexico is a much more established soccer country. They've hosted 2 World Cups previously. They have the stadia, they have the history. So you can, if you're a Mexican fan, you would expect a little more. I'd even maybe make an argument that the bid shouldn't be US 75% and then 25% split between 2 other countries. If you're doing a main US host, maybe Mexico should have a little more of the pie than Canada.
Yeah, I think that probably makes sense. Maybe that's just the easiest way to get both parties on board and maybe it also then relates to who is footing most of the bill, I believe is the term there.
Yeah, that's true.
While we're talking about the history of all these countries, though, I did want to add, we got a couple tweets. I'll go into the Department of Corrections on this one to say Canada has, in fact, qualified for a World Cup before.
1986?
I said I didn't think they had. They qualified in 1986.
Just the one time.
So I apologize. Canadian listeners. That is my mistake.
Oh, there's the other upside to Canada. Even if they're only hosting 1 game, they theoretically, they'll be having one of the automatic berths, so it's already a success.
I mean, and you have to believe that the 3 of the 10 games they will be getting are Canada's 3 group stage games.
Yes.
So with that in mind, then you get young Canadian fans, young Canadian players get to watch their team in a World Cup.
Yep.
That is the point of the expanded World Cup. So it's tough to really complain about that.
And there's also that same benefit to Mexico. I assume Mexico will host their own games, right? So you'll get a home at least up until the quarterfinals.
I mean, that said, they sell out stadiums in the United States just fine.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So in that way, it's fine. Also, I read a thing this morning from I'm sorry, I've forgotten his name, the president of the Mexican Football Federation, saying basically before there were no games, and this deal we've struck with the US, now we have 10 games. Right? Yeah. So it's no games or it's 10 games. I think you should take the 10 games. Is essentially what he said. I know he has to defend his position, but I can see his position.
Yeah, I can. I think I still go back to my complaint from last week, which is just that it's essentially a huge percentage of North America is now hosting one tournament.
I think that's the future, though. I think this is something FIFA are encouraging. I think that's what World Cups are going to look like now. They're going to look like they're going to span massive expanses.
I still love FIFA World. That's what this should be. FIFA Land, whatever you want to go with.
This was your plan to have FIFA just buy some land and build the stadia there and just host the World Cup there.
Yeah, and then it's always there. It's like a weird Jurassic Park, Disney World sort of combination where you fly to this island and you have all the fans there and it works really well and FIFA can gouge everyone for insane amounts of money. What could go wrong?
Some people will choose to live there year round.
Until the T-Rex gets out. Yes.
T-Rex can't take throw-ins.
Life finds a way, Daryl. Life finds a way.
But the other thing, so I understand all these sort of logistical complaints and all that, but the basic thing that I think everyone's missing because they're focused on the details
is that the United States is going to host a World Cup.
Yes, remember how upset we were when we got the results about 2018 and 2022 and it's going to Russia and Qatar and not to the United States. It looks like this World Cup is coming to the United States in 2026. I mean, there's no rival bid right now. As I understand it, the Asian Confederation can't post a rival bid because Qatar 2022.
I can't remember if they've changed that rule or not.
I think it's still in effect.
But even if they have, I think the point still stands that it's unlikely that they're going to award a World Cup to the same confederation
twice in a row.
Yeah,
and also I think the European bid is within that range as well because that's only 2 cycles back. So there's no European bid because of Russia 2018. So that means the only rival bids could be from South America, Oceania. I'm not sure New Zealand's going to host a World Cup, and Africa. Yeah. And what I read today in a Grant Wall piece,
I'm pretty sure that if Oceania is bidding for a World Cup, it's going to be New Zealand, Australia together.
Australia's the Asian Confederation.
That is a very good point.
Yeah.
That is the future. Right? Cross-confederation bids.
What I read today in a Grant Wall story for Sports Illustrated is that South America has its eye on a 2030 joint bid between Uruguay and Argentina to celebrate 100 years of the World Cup because the first one was in Uruguay. Yep. So they don't want to waste it with a bid on the 2026 World Cup. So that only leaves Africa, and there's been talk of Morocco, but there's no sort of no formalised bid has come yet. So I think this is almost nailed on. 2026 USA. He knocks on wood to not ruin it.
And here's my random theory. I do wonder if there was there was maybe discussions the United States would bid 2026, maybe Mexico bids 2030, if that rule has changed. And then there was some combination of or you guys could bid together, and then South America won't have a bid for 2026, and then you guys stay out of 2030 so we can have the 100-year anniversary. I feel like maybe there was a little bit of behind-the-scenes negotiating between those two confederations.
That's very possible,
Western Hemisphere loyalty.
But you can also see just CONCACAF loyalty. The fact that everybody got together on this, the bigger nations got together, Mexico, Canada, US, and said, hey, instead of competing against each other, let's all get it together. It moves it along faster. Now there's momentum for this sort of, I want to call it the NAFTA bid, as opposed to anywhere else, because they've got their bid on the table already.
It also makes sense from the perspective of one of the many complaints about Qatar, which I still am very angrier about Qatar getting a World Cup than I am about many things, is that
people are dying building the stadiums?
Yes, and it's tiny, and I don't know how they're going to have the infrastructure, and their bid isn't at all what they're going to do in the end, what they promised they'd be able to do. We can keep going. But yes, I think at the end of the day, it's the kind of modern slavery and the death of over thousands of people at this point. But it's also that it's a tiny, tiny country, and there have been many concerns about how do you fit everyone in there, how are you going to get all those stadia complete, and maybe this is the extreme reaction to it, is fine, you're mad about one country, we'll give it to a continent. All right? Is that big enough?
Okay, so I think we've made our positions clear. I'm pro. Yours not fully pro, but I guarantee 2026 you'll be excited.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And hopefully TSS is still going.
Hopefully,
in some form. We'll be holographs.
Or holograms. I never know the difference between the two.
It'll be both. You'll be able to get an extra subscription. We'll get you the holograph.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. All right. Still don't know the difference, but no, why not? Sure.
Me neither. I'll look into it.
Homonym and homophone, same thing.
I'll look into it. This is like Japan's World Cup bid, where they promised they would beam games around the world projected into stadiums as holograms. So there it is, holograms.
Remember when Qatar said that they'd have the ability to create clouds to block out the sun?
Yep.
That was fun.
Yep. I do remember that. I do remember that.
And underground access to all stadia, and everything would be air conditioned.
I also remember that.
That was fun. It's cool.
All right.
What if you could just do that in construction? I'm going to build this giant skyscraper, and everybody was like, yes, here's the money. And then you're like, actually, I don't know how to do that. I'm going to build a shack.
Doesn't that kind of happen with the renderings, the watercolor type things that people do? They're like, hey, this is everyone. Look at all the shiny, happy people. They're all smiling. They're crossing the street. And then when you get the final product, you're like,
wait a minute.
This isn't what you said it would be.
There aren't Priuses everywhere.
It's not as sunny as you said it would be in this rendering. Okay, coming up later in today's show, we are going to review Juventus' 3-0 win over Barcelona. Like I said, lots going on there. But first, we have a sponsor on today's episode. They're a sponsor for the third day in a row. It is, I'm picking it up again, QVC style. I'm sure listeners can guess what it is.
Yep.
Howler Magazine. Howler Magazine is the sponsor for today's episode. Howler are doing a special where they want Total Soccer Show listeners to subscribe to Howler. 20% off a subscription, only valid until end of day Friday. Go to shop.howlermagazine.com. Use code TSS at checkout.
I wish more than anything this had just been you make the noise of the magazine and you're like, listeners can figure it out. On to the next segment. But I will say, since we are discussing
George would not be happy.
Probably not, no. Since we are discussing it, I know we've both read the article by Will Parchman, friend of the show, about Bayer Leverkusen.
Yes,
he went over there.
It's called Against Modern Football, Bayer Leverkusen has the cure.
Yes, and it's interesting because I know Bayer Leverkusen as the team that, they're there. It's basically always near the top of the table, always in the Champions League, consistently in the Champions League, but never really setting the world alight. And so it was really interesting to read about maybe why that's the case, but also how they managed to have that consistency, everything that they've done, and then just kind of the city as a whole, some background about the people and about what has made the club the way it is.
The thing I really liked about it is how Will Parchman, obviously we like Will Parchman, we think he's a great writer, really good guest on the show. He makes the case that this is a model for American soccer.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why, not to just go overly promotional, but that's what I like about Howler Magazine. They take European things and tie them back in to US
I didn't realize
soccer.
That.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, not every time and not in a way that's annoying, but
it's not like an entire article about New Zealand soccer and then at the end it's and they speak English.
No, it's much cleverer than that. But so Leverkusen, Will states, is sort of an example of how American soccer could sort of model itself after the Bundesliga and after Bayer Leverkusen in particular because of their youth scouting.
Yeah.
Did you read that part?
Oh, yeah, because it's essentially that they have the ability to mark out specific territories. That's what they did intentionally at a time when other clubs weren't doing that. that. Then they have a huge number of scouts who go out there. They develop players from, I think, like they're looking at U7 or U9 to U14, I think
U8
is the area.
U14. I just read that blurb.
Yeah. And then the idea is that you're bringing in all these players, some of whom know that, like, oh, there's more money elsewhere, and so if those players don't want to be there, then you can kind of sell them on. But for a lot of players, it is this idea that you kind of show them everything. Mm-hmm. You don't promise them things that they're not going to have. You don't say we're definitely going to win the Champions League in 5 years. You show them exactly what you're doing. You show them the infrastructure. You make them appreciate that, and you get them excited to be on board, and then they're on board. And that's how they continue to keep young players in the team, sell off some for lots of money, continue to make a profit, and be successful in the highest level of German soccer.
And if you'd like to know sort of how that model can be applied to American soccer, then I suggest you read Will Parchman's story. And the best way to do that is to take a subscription to Howler magazine. And the best way to do that is to use the TSS discount code for 20% off, because, I can't remember if I mentioned this earlier, that is the biggest discount Howler magazine has ever offered.
Mm-hmm. And it's only because they love the voice of Daryl Grove so much.
Is that right? I thought it was you.
No, it's definitely you.
So to take advantage, you go to shop.howlermagazine.com. click subscribe, enter TSS, 3 letters, TSS at checkout. You will get 20% off. And this offer expires end of day Friday, which means 11:59 p.m. and 59 seconds US Eastern Time. If you're 1 second later, you have to pay the full price like a schmuck. Thank you to Howler Magazine for sponsoring today's episode.
Thank you to Daryl Grove for using Yiddish, I believe. Yiddish curse words thrown up into the Total Soccer Show.
Is that a curse word?
Oh, yeah, it is.
Oh, I apologize then. Shall we move on to Juventus Barcelona? Barcelona?
Yeah.
So, a surprising result?
By the way, speaking of that, we both play soccer with a gentleman from Spain by the name of Pedro. And I keep wanting to make fun of him for saying Barcelona the proper way, the Barcelona way.
Yeah.
Because I keep thinking that, like, anyone I've ever heard do that is an American, and I'm just like, come on now. And then I forget that he's actually Spanish. He's actually doing it. Like, that's actually how you pronounce it, right? Yeah. Okay. Never mind. My mistake.
Having watched Pedro play soccer, I would make fun of anything knowledge or skills related.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, so Juve beat Barcelona 3-0. I want to say Juve terrified Barcelona into a 3-0 win.
Yes.
Goals from Dybala. Dybala got 2, and the final goal, a Chiellini header that was fascinating to watch. In fact, I'd say every goal is fascinating to watch, but even before that, the first 10 seconds of this game were fascinating to watch.
Yeah, they were, because from the outset, I mean, you're the one who spotted it, that at kickoff, Barcelona have like the usual player alignment, essentially. Yeah. You've got your defenders where you think your defenders are going to be, the people taking the kickoff. Then you look at Juve, and their center backs, their defense was maybe 15 yards, maybe 20 yards from midfield.
Not far from the center circle.
And ready to go.
Yeah, so you knew the Juve press was coming, right?
Yep.
And I think I'd said in the preview that you'd know whether Juve were going for it or not, depending on whether they picked Dani Alves or Stefan Lichtsteiner at right back. It was Dani Alves.
It sure was.
And it was a really impressive press.
Yes. So Juve press Barcelona back. Eventually, it's Ter Stegen gets the ball, and this is one thing that I think I'm not sure if it's like the individual brilliance of the Juve players or the approach as a whole, or maybe a combination thereof. But Juan Cuadrado has spotted the fact that Jeremy Mathieu is playing on like the left side of a back three.
Yeah, so he's left centre back for Barcelona.
And
Cuadrado is the right winger for Juventus, for those who haven't seen it. Yeah.
Yes, and Cuadrado is essentially marking out Andres Iniesta, who's playing on the left side for Barcelona. Cuadrado moves to shut down Mathieu because there's that easy outlet pass for Ter Stegen to Mathieu. Ter Stegen spots that he's doing this, so then he sees Iniesta and thinks, oh, he's wide open now. But Cuadrado stops his run, and just basically, if you remove Cuadrado from that, the ball goes exactly to Iniesta.
It's a perfect pass, right?
It's a perfect pass, except that Cuadrado reads it and kind of adjusts his run accordingly, intercepts the ball.
I want to call it a fake press.
Yeah.
Or a feint press?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he fooled Ter Stegen into thinking the press was coming, and then Ter Stegen thought he'd go over the top of it, but then the press didn't come, and Cuadrado collects the ball.
And I think that that's a fair categorization because, I mean, Barcelona have handled a press before. It's an easy, not an easy way.
Sometimes better than others.
Yes, but I think that my point is that, like, it's not an easy way, but it is an obvious way to deal with a team that wants possession, is to put them under pressure as quickly and as often as you can and try to just make them uncomfortable. So it isn't just a press, because I think that alone is something Barcelona could handle.
Yeah, maybe they can pass their way out of it or over it. Yeah.
Whereas what Juventus were doing, it was this weird hybrid of pressing, but then, as I mentioned with Cuadrado, sitting off a little bit. There'd be times when Barcelona would have the ball and Juventus's attack, final third, defensive third, and you'd see Dani Alves standing somebody up, but not going in to try to stick them.
Yes.
And it wasn't an aggressive press. It was sort of, we have all of the numbers back. We have 10 men behind the ball, so we can afford to kind of be a little bit cautious here, stack our lines, and force Barcelona into trying to do something. And then we can break and put you under pressure and counterattack. It was just this weird hybrid approach that I don't think Barcelona were prepared for.
And I still don't think, in some ways, it still doesn't make sense, right? The thing that Juve did in terms of funneling the ball infield. So I read this on Black and White and Red All Over, which is, one, an excellent name for a Juventus blog, and two, it's the SB Nation Juventus blog. They made the point in the preview that Juve will, instead of forcing you out to the wings when you have the ball, they will force you into the middle, right? Which is what you were talking about, right? Where Dani Alves would not show you the outside, but would show you the inside. Send Barcelona into the middle where there are Juventus bodies, right? There'd be Khedira and Pjanic and other guys waiting for them. You would expect that Barcelona could pass their way through a midfield.
Yeah.
You would be wrong.
Yeah.
You would see Juventus win the ball back almost every time.
And and to that point, so I said in those first couple seconds that then Ter Stegen plays that ball, Cuadrado intercepts, but really what he does is he gets a head to it, because it's like a chipped ball. He heads it straight up in the air, and it should be a clean header for Jeremy Mathieu. He's got positioning and everything, but Dybala comes across, doesn't even try to go for the ball really, obviously isn't fouling, but is just trying to put him under pressure. He's just trying to make him a little bit uncomfortable, so that what should have been a clear 30-yard header is instead a 10-yard header that goes straight to, I believe it's Gonzalo Higuain, it might be Miralem Pjanic gets the ball. Okay. He plays it into Higuain lays it off, and Juventus get a shot within the opening.
Khedira skies it, but it's it's a chance within, I think I wrote down, right, in the first 10 seconds of the Cuadrado press, or fake press, the Khedira shot is within 22 seconds.
But
that's how fast Juventus put them under pressure.
Exactly, and so that's what I'm saying is it's to your point about Barcelona Juventus winning that ball back. It's that half challenge from Dybala just to throw Barcelona off is enough that then allows Juventus to collect that ball. So it's two examples of Juventus just kind of, for lack of a better term, as cliche as it is, wanting it a little bit more, being a little bit more up for it, and really putting in those challenges, putting in that effort to end up getting the ball and to end up getting shots.
So it's a good mix of an intelligent tactical strategy with just tackle hard and win the ball.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I think you could juxtapose that sort of intensity from across the board for Juventus with the first goal from Juve. Because obviously it's a wonderful turn and strike from Dybala, more on that in a second. But it starts with Juventus with the ball kind of trying to play out of the back. And Lionel Messi is supposed to be tracking Sami Khedira. It's basically kind of moving it around, trying to find an opening. The ball goes to Khedira, and Lionel Messi is behind him. But if he tracks him, we'll stick with him, maybe win the ball back or foul him or force him to cut backwards.
Is this in contrast to what Juve do?
Yes.
The fact that Messi's not tracking?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And so Messi then basically just kind of stops his run. Khedira then is open, gets the ball back, and now he has nobody around him. So Javier Mascherano has to slide across. Javier Mascherano playing in front of that back three.
He was the holding midfielder, right? He's the Kyle Beckerman of Barcelona.
So now
because Busquets is out. That's a big thing.
That's the big thing. He's suspended for this game. So then Mascherano has to come over to try to cover Khedira. Then Barcelona kind of move over with him to try to crowd the space.
Mathieu then gets dragged over to cover Mascherano's space.
And then basically it's a quick transition. Higuain spots that the shift has happened. He sees Juan Cuadrado wide open on the right wing. He plays a really great ball out wide to Cuadrado. Cuadrado then goes right at the defense. He pulls defenders towards him, and that leaves Dybala wide open, or Dybala, however you want to go with the pronunciation there, wide open in the box for a kid that, you, in the preview, talked about how lethal he is and how good he is. He's one of the few people, not one of the few, but one of the main people on Juventus that you absolutely don't want to leave unmarked, and you see why.
Here's the thing with Dybala, which is how I'm saying it. I'm not sure that's right. I talked in the preview that I'd watched a lot of Dybala highlights, right? And there's a thing where you watch highlights, you only see the very best stuff. I watched 90 minutes of this game. I feel like I was watching another highlight video.
Yeah.
Because he was scoring within, I'm not sure when this first goal comes actually, but it's not long into the game.
It is the 7th minute.
There you go. So I feel like this should have had some music in the background as I was watching this Dybala performance in the first few minutes.
This does feel like you could do the Zidane 21st century portrait. You could give his performance that treatment, because he gets 2 goals. They're early goals. So then, you've got until he subs out in the 80-somethingth minute. So there's 60 minutes with no goals. But it's so many good little things he does. In this play, he makes a really smart run into the middle, and he continuously does that sort of drifting slow jog, but intensifies the run a little bit to make sure that no one is ever entirely confident that they're marking him.
It's that run that like is someone who's like just like walking through the park whistling, like looks like they're minding their own business, but you actually know where you're going.
But it's just it's one of those things that I'm so amazed by because I have no idea how to do it, but how to keep yourself at such a distance that if you, Daryl, are the defender, you're sort of like, well, he's close to me, but he's too far away. Clearly somebody else has got him.
Or maybe he's the other person's
there's Sergi. Sergi's close enough to him, and nobody ever takes responsibility for him, and then he just continues to operate in that space until he gets the ball.
You said he was wide open, but really there are 4 guys around him. It's just that none of the 4 guys are fully responsible for. Like everyone's 25% responsible for him, and no one steps and tackles him.
No,
right?
Yeah, and I do think it's an amazing finish. He gets the ball. I can't remember if he settles with his right and turns and shoots with his left in the same motion.
Yeah, because he receives it with his right, but also starts to spin a little bit, and then he turns and doesn't entirely face goal, but then he's like facing goal enough to wrap his left foot around it and find that corner.
Yeah, both goals he scores are very obvious indicators that he has that like preternatural ability to know where the goal is in relation to where he is and know how to put that shot on frame.
I'd also call them both very efficient. Was I talking about this in the preview? I think I was, that like he has lots of flicks and tricks, like he's capable of like his great close control and all that, but he doesn't waste many moves, and you can see that perfectly in the goal, right? There's another player who could do a lot more and like try and juke their way past 3 Barcelona defenders, but instead he knows enough to just receive, turn, shoot, goal, 1-0.
Yeah, 1-0. And so it starts to feel a little bit like Juventus have got this right, and then maybe Barcelona have got this wrong. And I think that is exemplified by 2 different things. The first one is that we ended up counting Luis Enrique starts with a formation, changes, has a different formation at the beginning of the second half, and changes that again when Juve go up 3-0.
Did they go from like back 3 to back 4? Then...
To back 3 to back 4.
Yeah.
I mean, and he keeps
changing.
because
they start the second half in a back 4, right?
You're right. It's back 3 to back 4. Then they change that back 4 and bring in another player at halftime. They bring in Andre Gomes and take out Jeremy Mathieu, and then they change it again. So 4 formation changes in one game versus Juventus kind of sticking with the
4-2-3-1.
Yeah, with the approach that they know is going to get the result.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that I think is a good exemplifier of this game. The other one I want to talk about is in the 21st minute, 1 minute before Dybala scores his second goal. Lionel Messi has one of the best passes I think we've seen in a very long time.
I gasped. We watched it live in studio together. I absolutely gasped when I saw this pass.
So I like just made a quick note in my notes.
This is the Iniesta chance. If you watch this game and trying to think what Tyler's talking about, it's the Iniesta chance.
It is. I quickly wrote down in my notes he splits 4, maybe 5 players. Nope, he split 6. He split 6 players with one pass.
Leo Messi.
He had no business doing that. But and it's amazing because he is so clever in this pass that it looks, I forget who it looks like he's going to pass to, but part of the reason why there's an opening is because Juan Cuadrado was like, oh, Neymar's open, I better step to him. And as he steps, the ball's already in motion. It's just such a disguised pass. Then he spotted this very good run from Andres Iniesta that puts him in one-on-one with Gigi Buffon. And I think that the other reason why this stands out to me, it's an amazing pass, but we've both played those games where it starts to feel like, uh-oh. Like, no matter what we're doing in these, obviously we're going to score here, and then it doesn't go in, and those chances start to kind of accumulate. You start to get a little frustrated and a little bit nervous. Suddenly the other team is up 2-0, and it feels like it's not your night.
And don't you think, to your point, that Messi pass, because through Pjanic's legs, I believe, it's a nutmeg and a pass that beats 6 people. That's how good it is. You saw this through the legs of Pjanic, like it's the poster for The Graduate.
Wow. It's a topical reference.
Classic 60s film. If that goal goes in, if Iniesta scores off that pass makes the all-time UEFA Champions League highlight. Right? Instead, we got the other end and it's a goal to Juventus.
I mean, it becomes the conversation about how Lionel Messi has the ability to put a team on his back and elevate whenever the other people aren't performing. Because he, moments before that, tried to play a diagonal ball and played it completely the wrong way.
Right, yeah.
In a way that we were both like, that wasn't Messi. That was Sergio Roberto. Let's be real here.
This was Messi.
Yes, it was.
So it leaves Iniesta one-on-one with Gigi Buffon. And in a surprise, right? Buffon could not have known that was coming. So we rewatched this moment. It is excellent work by Buffon. It's not a failure by Iniesta.
Nope.
It is an excellent save from Buffon.
It is because, first of all, he reacts faster than anyone else on the field. Maybe even Andres Iniesta, who knows that ball's coming, but I think still probably has a half second of what, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew he was good, but damn.
But Buffon comes out, he gets off his line very quickly because I think he's read the play correctly.
Yeah.
But the key distinction here, I think, is that he stops. And he doesn't, and that's not to say that he does like the goalkeeper indecision of comes out and then backpedals.
No.
Is that he comes
goes out to the exact spot he wants to be at.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then stops and then makes himself big, but makes Iniesta make the first move. And so he doesn't just come flying out and try to block, maybe concede a penalty, maybe jump out and have Iniesta pass it underneath him. He makes himself big, he keeps control of his body, and then he makes Iniesta try to make something happen, and that allows him to be like the reactionary goalkeeper as opposed to the kind of I'm throwing myself at you and hoping something works.
Yes, it ends with a left-handed save.
Yeah,
right?
he just gets the fingers to it, and then as the commentator said, celebrates like he scored a goal.
To add another topical movie reference, Gigi Buffon is like Dirty Harry. He says to Iniesta, your move, punk.
Make my day?
Yeah, make my day.
All right. I always get that one confused with Taxi Driver. So that's you talking to me. There we go. Okay, we're good.
Yeah,
Which maybe he doesn't actually say. I forget how it
he
works.
Does. No, yeah, he says that to himself in the mirror.
Right.
That's that kind of movie.
But isn't that one of those, to go off on a tangent here, isn't that one of those like most misquoted things? Like aren't there all those different movies where it's like he doesn't say one word or two words or I forget. Anyway.
He doesn't say play it again, Sam, in Casablanca.
That's like the biggest one, right? And everybody thinks he does.
Yep.
There's a couple of those. Anyway, back to the game.
That huge Buffon save, right? So, but maybe Buffon is the hero of the hour, the guy who puts the team on his back, kind of. Because very soon after, I think they're showing replays of that save still when the second goal happens.
That's why it's key, is because he turns it out for a corner. That corner is headed over the bar by Mascherano.
Heads it over.
From that goal kick, we don't really know what happens because, as you said, there's a bunch of different replays. Because it is an amazing save, and so they show a few more than maybe they should, which is why we don't know quite the build-up. But
it's
it
the
looks
pass
like
on the save, right? Yeah, it's the replays. Yeah.
But it looks like it is a goal kick taken short, and then I'm going to assume it's played wide and then played back into the middle for Bonucci, only because he gets the ball about 8 yards from goal, he being Bonucci, and that would obviously be an illegal goal kick. And I can't imagine that he received it at the box and took it right back towards goal.
The ref just didn't notice.
So I'm going to guess maybe it was played back to him under duress, and that's why he just kind of hoofs it long.
Or does he find Gonzalo Higuain?
I think it's a combination because in as much as we're praising Lionel Messi for that amazing pass, this is not the equivalent. But
Bonucci is famous for like good long balls out of the back.
He picks out, maybe he picks out, or whatever it is, he finds the ball. He puts the ball directly on Gonzalo Higuain, and in so doing, bypasses, I believe, 6 Barcelona players.
It's as good as Messi's pass.
Not quite, but it's still a very good pass.
Statistically, it's as good as Messi's pass.
So it goes Bonucci to Higuain. Higuain, I think, just as a one-touch hold-up, drops it to Pjanic. Pjanic plays it out wide for Mandzukic.
Yep.
Mandzukic down the line, squares it sort of for Dybala. It takes a little bit of a deflection, and here again is why I think you could have a highlight reel of just Dybala. Because it's not just, I'm going to pronounce it differently every single time.
Yeah,
there we go.
Cover your odds, right?
Yeah, why not? Because it's not just, it's a one-time finish, it's a really good finish, left foot into the near post. It is all those things, but it takes that deflection, and he has to adjust his run.
He does, yes.
Because he's already moving at pretty much full speed, adjust just a little bit, gets his body in the right position, and is able to hit that ball perfectly.
Absolutely. Okay, there's a name you mentioned in the build-up to the second goal.
And I want to talk about him again.
You also mentioned him in the build-up to the first goal.
Yep.
Gonzalo Higuain. I feel like if you watch the highlights kind of casually, you'll remember he had a header early on that he headed straight at Ter Stegen. You remember he had a chance one-on-one with Ter Stegen where maybe he should have squared it to Mandzukic. So it's actually 2-on-1, and it gets saved.
Yep.
So you'll think maybe he didn't have a great game. But he was the sort of link-up guy in both of the first 2 goals, making the smart pass both times.
He is Juventus's bassist.
Bassist?
Because no bassist is ever looked upon as like, he's the best man, except for maybe Flea. Flea is the exception, and Flea is the number one bassist that people can name.
Yeah.
Apologies to John Entwistle, but it's because he keeps the rhythm.
Paul McCartney?
Was he the bassist?
Yeah, he was the bassist for the Beatles.
Yeah, well, whatever. He did some other stuff for the Beatles that I think maybe elevates. But my point is that
he also sang,
the bassist, just a few times. Speaking of our apocryphal quotes and conversations, that image that everyone loves of John and Paul being asked, is Ringo the greatest drummer in the Beatles? Or is the greatest drummer in the world? And then they respond,
he's not even the best in the Beatles?
Didn't happen. Not a real thing. I think that was a comedian's joke that got turned into it.
Okay.
But anyway, Higuain, though, in this situation, he does what a bassist does. It's not that glamorous. You might get lost in the shuffle. He's not going to get the headlines. But
gets calluses on his fingers.
Yeah, he gets calluses on his fingers. But he shows them the big moments. He does the work that needs to be done to keep everything going.
Yeah.
He links up play, now moving away from the basest analogy, but he links up play, he drops back. I mean, he does the defensive work.
Yeah, he does.
So many times he was behind the ball, shielding, shepherding, and then he's not the fastest player, but he was still getting involved in attacks. In that Dybala goal for the second goal, he takes 2 center backs away that creates that space.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of maybe underrated work, or maybe that's the hipster take, but it was a very impressive performance, I think, from Gonzalo Higuain, even if he didn't get on the score sheet.
And yet, there's another Juventus goal.
Yes, there is.
I believe it comes not long after that missed Higuain chance. But it's Chiellini with the header after what I'm going to call a wrestling match with Javier Mascherano from a corner kick.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best way to do it, to describe it. And this was one of a few different incidents in which I think you said the Barcelona strategy for marking appears to just be let's get inside their jerseys.
Yeah, because Barcelona just don't have that many big guys, right? They've got Gerard Piqué and they've got Umtiti, and I think Mathieu when he was on maybe. But compare that with Juventus. They've got both their centre-backs. They've got Khedira's not a small guy. They've got Higuain. Their left winger is Mario Mandzukic.
Yeah.
So suddenly Barcelona are massively outnumbered in terms of big guys. So yeah, instead of I think trying to beat them in the air, there was a lot of just hold on to their jerseys and hope they don't float away.
I mean, and to the extent that Khedira gets called for a foul before he gets booked for diving, I'm not so sure about. I mean, the yellow card maybe I think is a little more justifiable because he might have taken a dive, but the foul that he gets. You watch the replay, and it's just Gerard Piqué holding his jersey, like really holding his jersey. And then I forget, I think it's Umtiti is also in there holding someone else's jersey. Like it's just you could call 2 fouls there. Similarly on this goal, you could easily have called this as a penalty. If it doesn't go in, because it's Mascherano, I think at one point, isn't even watching the ball anymore. He's just holding on to Chiellini and trying to body him away from getting a head on it.
They look like 2 linemen.
Yes, they do.
And they look like but one guy who maybe shouldn't be a lineman.
No. Well, yes, but you're absolutely right. It looks like when the play has gone, like say, like you're on the right side, the play goes to the left, and you'll see those 2 linemen like still battling because they're just so intense. That's what it looks like because they're far away. They're at the far post, and no one's really around them. So it's just these 2 guys tussling. Yeah. But then all of a sudden, the bigger one that you would expect to win that challenge does and puts the ball in the net.
He doesn't even jump, does he? He just like keeps wrestling with Mascherano and then eventually just leans in and heads it.
But I think that is incredibly impressive because Mascherano is really just bodying him off. And I know that that's what he has to do, and I know that is kind of what happens on corners. But it shows how strong Chiellini is that like he's kind of moving away from goal. His momentum is taking him away. He corrects that, so now he's moving back towards. And as you said, he kind of dives in, leans in, and has a perfectly directional header that tings off the far post and goes in.
Because didn't you notice this? That maybe the actual play was meant to be Chiellini screens
for Bonucci.
And Bonucci goes for the header. Because the corner is kind of overhit, then Chiellini adjusts to, instead of screening, I'm going to like lean over Mascherano and head this in.
Yep. Chiellini with his, what did you tell me, PhD or master's?
So what I read is that he got a master's in business administration from the University of Turin. I saw the photos. He was awarded, this is a real degree that he has completed in his spare time. But I also read that for some reason that also accords him like a doctorate. So he's Dr. Chiellini. I assume maybe it just works differently in Italy.
Do you feel like maybe his name awards him a doctorate? They're like, you did a master's, but why not? We'll give you a doctorate too.
Yeah, why not?
Honorary doctorate, sure.
But he's kind of a Renaissance man, right? If you can like wrestle Mascherano on corners and get a master's in business administration, that's a modern Renaissance man.
Oh yeah, I think so.
He's the new Michelangelo.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be, not surprisingly, this is a bold statement, Daryl. I hope you're okay with this. I think it's going to be a very captivating second leg. Your thoughts?
I mean, so it's going to be at Barcelona, right?
Yep.
And obviously everybody knows what happened last time. I would go with the idea that Juve are much more savvy defenders than PSG.
Yep.
PSG came to the Camp Nou with the idea that, all right, I know pressing works in the first leg. We're just going to sit back and absorb whatever Barcelona can throw at us for 90 minutes, and that will be enough, and it was not enough.
It was not.
Juve won't make that same mistake. They'll have sort of an organised system, and even if Barcelona can break it down a little bit, Juve will catch them on the break, or something like that will happen.
And I want to say, again, 2 stats from the preview that I know you're not such a big fan of stats when it comes to Champions League because these 2 teams haven't met.
From 2 leagues.
Yeah. But in the Champions League so far this season, I think heading into this one, Barcelona had scored like 26 goals.
Wow.
Yeah, so to be held scoreless is kind of a big deal. The other one, again, do you know how many goals Juventus have conceded in all of the Champions League this season? Because the answer is 2.
Wow.
Yes. So Barcelona will now need to more than double the amount of goals that Juventus have conceded all year in the Champions League to get the result. It's going to be difficult, is all I'm saying.
Final thing I want to talk about before we say goodbye is, once again, Paolo Dybala. So I was obviously really excited by his performance. I think when I researched him before the preview, he only has 6 caps for Argentina.
That's insane.
Leo Messi is suspended for the next few World Cup qualifiers. There's going to be a new Argentina coach coming in because Bauza was fired. They think it's going to be...
Cough, cough, Jorge Sampaoli, cough,
They
cough.
think it's going to be cough, cough, Jorge Sampaoli.
Listeners,
cough, cough.
You're welcome. I didn't cough into your ears.
I think there's possibly a movement for, hey, let's build this team around Dybala.
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the commentators in that game...
This is based on no Argentinian knowledge, by the way. This is just what I would do after watching this game.
Yeah, I think one of the commentators said, it's the new Messi, which I'm sure has been the name of 8 million different Argentinian players.
I saw a headline of Dybala says, I'm not the new Messi, I want to be the first Dybala.
I like
kind
that.
of thing. Yeah, that's a good attitude for
But I'm
team.
absolutely on board with what you're saying. I think he needs to be in there. He deserves some more caps, and I want to see more of that celebration. I like his celebration.
What do you like about his celebration?
I don't know. It's just cool looking.
Oh, because you saw the banner in the stands, right? When he puts his fingers on his cheekbones.
It's a way better version of what Breck Shea does.
Way to pull it back around to American
Yeah,
soccer.
why not?
Good job,
Yep.
Taylor. Okay, that is all from us for today. We both have soccer to go and play. But we will be back tomorrow with our reviews of Dortmund, Monaco, Bayern, Real Madrid, and what's the other one? Atletico versus Leicester City.
My final point I want to make about this game.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's
I moved this on, I shouldn't have.
No, it's fine. It's just a minor thing. Because
Just didn't get you on time for your game.
I appreciate that. But you and I have had many conversations about zonal versus man marking. I am not a big fan of zonal marking. I think you tend to like it more than I do.
Yeah.
I will say that the commentators in this game were inclined to blame zonal marking for that Chiellini goal. No zonal marking at all. I mean, based on the fact that every jersey was being held, I'm pretty sure that was not zonal marking.
Unless the zones they were referring to were
the Juventus
black
jerseys.
and white fabric. Then no, that was not zonal marking. I actually think what happened is they did zonal mark on a free kick when they lined up on the 18, and I think, but that's kind of what you do because you're trying to hold that line rather than mark the men. Then you get you don't have an offside trap. I think maybe the commentators got confused and thought that's what they were doing the whole time.
I hope that they were just they're doing it the first minutes. I'm sure they do it the whole game.
Yeah.
And switching off.
Yeah, and not there's also multiple formation switches in there, right?
Well, there's that too, yeah.
Again, it was a Barcelona problem, right? Stick to one thing. That's what Juve did, and it seemed to work.
Things don't always need to be 2 things or 4 things.
On that note, I will say, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Right back at you, buddy, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Listeners, thank you for listening. We know other podcasts are available. We're glad you listened to ours, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.